You weren't given that platform, the platform of this late night show, because of your political views. You were given the platform in order to create comedy. Your job is to create comedy, and in these scenarios, it's more important than ever. Your job is more important than on days where it's easy to do. Jimmy Kimmel was #1 trend on YouTube, social media today. I'm starting to realize the trending list is not so much about what's trending, but what YouTube wants to be trending. Before I move on, because we'll talk about Jimmy Kimmel's grandstanding and of course just the litany of factual errors. Question of the day, are you still able to watch late night? Usually I'm able to separate the art from the artist. We've talked about that. But at what point is it too much? At what point does a propagandizing become so blatant that you just have to tune out? It's become really hard. And I was the biggest Conan fan. Huge Conan fan. I can't watch it. Jimmy Kimmel went up, and of course this is the rule rather than the exception, crying, talking about the Las Vegas shooting. And listen, this is, first off, let's address a tragedy. Absolutely, I think that every side, both the left and the right, care about lives lost. We just have different solutions, and of course I believe that one side is more informed on what are actually pragmatic solutions versus the other. But let's walk through Jimmy Kimmel's recent #1 trending diatribe.
Of course, we pray for the victims and for their families and friends, and we wonder why, even though there's probably no way to ever know why a human being would do something like this to other human beings who are at a concert.
This is important because it sets it up. It's a really simple answer why. It's called evil. It's something the left refuses to acknowledge exists, because at that point, then all of a sudden the situational ethics, they no longer function. You need to have a base of some kind of principle. Listen, it's horrible. It doesn't mean that you have to comprehend evil on an empathetic level. It is horrible. It should be absolutely disgusting, but it's not a complex question. Why would someone do it? Evil. What led them to that evil? Well, then we'll get to that. And what allowed them to commit that act of evil, and what's the best way to curb it moving forward? That's the discussion we should be having. Let's move on.
There are a lot of things we can do about it, but we don't, which is interesting, because when someone with a beard attacks us, we tap phones, we invoke travel bans, we build walls, we take every possible precaution to make sure it doesn't happen again. But when an American buys a gun and kills other Americans, then there's nothing we can do about that. And Second Amendment, I guess, our forefathers wanted us to have AK-47s, is the argument, I assume.
Now, I don't know if Chuck Schumer's writing this one for him as well as what happened with the healthcare issue, but Second Amendment, founding fathers. Just because you act as though it's absurd doesn't make it absurd. Our founders wanted to have just a few things we'll list off here that he was wrong about. AK-47s, that's an easy one. Just go and watch one of our previous videos. It's a Second Amendment for muskets only. Not only if you understand the wording and the history of the Second Amendment did it, of course, apply to modern day weaponry, but even back then, there was the Puckle gun, the Girandoni air rifle. There was actually a letter written of marque and reprisal to a private ship. They were allowing them to personally have cannons. It was written as, well, of course you can have cannons. You have the right to protect your ship.
Do it.
The idea that it was only relegated to muskets is so quickly and thoroughly debunked that we've done it. We won't waste a ton of time on it here. Then he goes on to say, oh, if a person with a beard. Let's be honest about what he's talking about here. He means a brown person with a beard. This is the whole identity politics, as though if it's a Muslim, we care, but if it's a white person, we don't care. Okay, let's go with that. I'll admit to a certain degree of that. Why? Because of a consistent pattern of behavior based on ideology. An outlier is just that, an outlier. But if you can actually look at a correlation between people who follow a very specific, a political prescription as well as a religion, as we do with Islam, guess what? It should be relevant, because that comes to the discussion. Can we do something about it? So let's go to why someone might think someone with a beard could be a little bit different than just the random white guy who's out of his mind or white supremacist who the left loves to scream about. Okay, this is one thing that's important because I saw this at Vox. I call this the 9/11 fallacy, where the quote is, since 9/11, 106 people have been killed by far-right violent extremists in the US. 119 have been killed by Islamists. So it seems comparable. Now, if you include one day earlier, 9/11, it puts the number over 3,100. Some would say significant.
Some might say
Now, I get you can say, well, we shouldn't include it, we should include it, but again, you're starting after an act of global terrorism committed by the guys with the beards. And this is just a United States statistic. So you see this at Vox, you see people like Jimmy Kimmel parrot it. Islamic attacks globally, that's the important number. They account for more than 74% of all deaths from terrorism. ISIS, Boko Haram, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, okay, there's no surprise there. So if someone who's brown Does it with a beard? Shouting out Allahu Akbar, does it matter more? No, it means that we have more of a semblance of a motive. And if we see other people shouting Allahu Akbar, we have to recognize a pattern of behavior. Now he goes on this. I love this. He says, because of this, we invoke travel bans, we build walls, just skims over it. Well, okay, you say there's nothing we can, does that help stop terror attacks? Securing borders and profiling, we can mock it, but does it work? They work everywhere they've been implemented, from Israel to Hungary. Israel experienced a 90% drop in terror attacks after building a fence in the West Bank. Hungary cut its influx of migrants from several thousand a day to less than 40, just by erecting a couple of fences. And the important thing to remember here is, again, Islam is an ideology. Why would the beard, why would the garb matter? Because it's a representation of what he believes, a belief that prescribes him to kill other people. Contrast that with this shooter. No known affiliations, motivations yet, or history of crime yet. But would securing the border stop that? No. Would putting up a wall stop this guy? Probably not. Would anything short of a complete and total gun ban stop this guy? No, and by the way, that wouldn't work either.
No.
So what does Jimmy Kimmel want us to do?
U-Hauls are cheap to rent.
Yes. What does Jimmy Kimmel want us to do? Does he want it to be a Minority Report, where you arrest people for crimes they have yet to commit? Since the beginning of time, there have been bad people committing bad things because evil lives amongst us. It brings us back to that point. If you acknowledge evil, then you can be honest about the conversation that we're having. Next clip.
Every one of these shootings, the murderer used automatic or semi-automatic rifles,
Every
which are
one?
not weapons used for self-defense. They're
Incorrect.
weapons designed to kill large numbers of people in the shortest possible amount of time. And this guy reportedly had 10 of them in his room, apparently legally. At least some of them were there legally. Why is that allowed?
Okay, a couple things. You know who else would probably have 10 in their room? People in your security detail, Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah.
Bet you they'd probably have a lot of scary black rifles that you don't know about. But because they do, you get to sleep at night and be escorted to and from your Hollywood studio. So here he just says some things that are factually completely incorrect. He says all of these mass shootings. Doesn't even say a lot of them. He says all of these mass shootings, which, again, the first lesson, Jimmy Kimmel, don't use absolutes when you have no idea as to what the hell you're talking about. Okay, when you're a dumbass, don't say all, always, everyone. Try and cover your tracks a little bit. Not everyone out there, if it's an argument from truth, you don't need to do it. But when you're a dumb bag of shit like Jimmy Kimmel, it pays to not take chances. Let's assume he weren't an absolute simpleton and assume that he said far more mass shootings, not even all. We'll give him some more leeway. No, more mass shootings committed by these assault rifles. It's not even true. If we take mass shootings, meaning 4 or more, take any shootings. The FBI data show that in 2012, only 320-something of over 11,000 people shot in the U.S. were killed by rifles of any kind. They're committed by handguns, far more. Another thing he does, word trickery. We've talked about this. He conflates automatic with semi-automatic. It's like comparing a hamburger and lasagna. They're both food. It's not the same thing at all. Nearly all guns today sold, for those who don't know, and again, they're banking on you not knowing. Jimmy Kimmel is banking on you being as moronic as him. Pistols, semi-automatic. Most guns that are sold today, semi-automatics. And they're used defensively, semi-automatics. But as far as in practice, a revolver acts like a semi-automatic. On a technical level, there isn't a semi-automatic rechambering of a round, but one trigger pull, one round, one bullet, that's what semi-automatic means. Fully automatic is heavily regulated, and basically it's not available to the average citizen. And he goes on to say, he says there's no defensive purpose for these guns. Incorrect. There are no defensive uses for these. They're actually used to save far more lives than they ever take. That's the story that people don't talk about. We know, according to the United States Census Bureau, that at least 100,000 to 3 million. Somewhere, even the left has to acknowledge it's somewhere close to 2 million cases each year where firearms are used defensively. Now, why is there such a discrepancy? Because it's hard to measure how many lives are saved by someone brandishing a gun and never actually using it.
Never actually firing it, yep.
Guns are used to save more lives. And yes, that means the scary black rifles, they're used defensively far more than offensively. So again, if you go, oh, what's a semi-automatic and an automatic? You don't know. And hey, there's no defensive use for these firearms. I guess you could actually start to believe some of the bullcrap coming out from Jimmy Kimmel. Luckily, there's more that we can debunk.
This morning, she said it was not the time for political debate. And I don't know, we have 59 innocent people dead. It wasn't their time either. So I think now is the time for political debate.
Well, I'm glad you think so, Jimmy. It's not like it would be time for your comedic monologue. This is the arrogance of the Hollywood left. He presumes to speak on behalf of everyone else. Okay, in this context, let's take this. These 59 people died in Las Vegas at a country concert. How much do you want to bet that at least a plurality of them would hate Jimmy Kimmel speaking for them?
You know, in February, he also signed a bill that made it easier for people with severe mental illness to buy guns legally.
That's actually not true. Okay, and this is one thing, the bill he's talking about, it was actually reversing an Obama administration rule that actually took Second Amendment basic rights away from seniors who were declared incompetent to manage their pension or disability payments. Even the ACLU came out against this Obama rule. Okay, so let's just talk that piece of legislation. We need to deal right here with the pragmatic and the philosophical when it comes to the Second Amendment. So, no, he's wrong, he's incorrect, he's not explaining what that is. Go to the source that we just listed. Hopefully you can learn more about that bill. But again, people talk of this conversation. Well, if you're the mentally ill, okay, this is important. We need to define what is mentally ill. Now, keep in mind, if you look at the 4 dissenting Supreme Court justices on the Heller versus DC case, they don't believe you have the right to own a firearm at all. Again, this is important. The legal argument is not, oh, it's only for muskets. The legal argument isn't, well, it should only be revolvers or pump shotgun. The only legal argument made at the Supreme Court is you have no right, period, to private firearm ownership, period, ever, period. That's the argument that they make. So you need to understand that to then, okay, scale it back. When they say mental health, what do they mean? Well, they want everybody to be banned from having any kinds of firearms. Do you really want the federal government in control as to your right to self-preservation, your God-given right to self-preservation because you've taken a Xanax? You think it's a slippery slope? It's actually been proposed. Next clip.
It's so crazy. Right now, there are loopholes in the law that let people avoid background checks if they buy a gun privately from another party, if they buy a gun online or at a gun show.
No! No! Okay, go see. We did a video on this gun show loophole, a hidden camera video. It is completely false. First off, the online loophole, it doesn't even exist.
No.
The gun show loophole comes from this idea of private transactions that usually occur between family members. Okay. Obama was the one who popularized this myth, and he used that term. We actually went to the gun show in Indiana. Remember, not gay Jared?
The famous one that he villainized.
That he referred to, and no one would give us a gun through the gun show loophole. You can go watch the video.
Maybe he just really dumb and picked a really bad example.
How's it still a thing? Like, this has been debunked so many times.
It's still a thing because people like Jimmy Kimmel, who aren't doing their job of writing comedy, don't know the difference between an automatic or semi-automatic rifle, and people are getting their information from him. Hey, Jimmy, what's a revolver? Why, you pull something and something comes out of there. I want you determining our gun control legislation, sir.
#1 trend on YouTube.
Yeah. Gosh. It's a myth that was popularized by Obama, and it was such an unbelievably blatant lie. Even Washington Post gave it 2 Pinocchios, which apparently is a valid system of rating from a valid newspaper. Next clip.
By the way, the House of Representatives will be voting on a piece of legislation this week. It's a bill to legalize the sale of silencers for guns. This is what they're working on. We have a major problem with gun violence in this country, and I guess they don't care. And if I'm wrong on that, fine, do something about it, because I'm sick of it.
Bill proposing the legalization of silencers. Oh, my God, no! He thinks it's the films with Coral. Again, this just goes to show you, this is one of those arguments. Anyone you know out there who's pro-gun control, buy them a gun. That's what he said. Hashtag gift a gun. Buy them a gun. They'll never be pro-gun control again. They'll never be gun control proponents again, I should say. They'll never be anti-gun activists again because they'll go through the background check. They'll understand what's necessary.
The classes.
Even better, sign them up for concealed carry course. Okay. This is one of those arguments that is very simple to describe. It is an argument between completely uninformed people who know nothing about firearms and firearm owners. That's it. You don't get the firearm owners who side with someone like Jimmy Kimmel. So he goes, suppressors, by the way. This is important. He talks about this. They don't make it whisper quiet. And it's actually common practice in Europe. Again, strict gun control. But if you're a hunter, it's considered rude to not use it.
Yeah.
For noise pollution, for hunters nearby. Silencers are designed to protect hearing for hunters and shooters. By the way, let's put this again into the pragmatic. Let's talk about the Vegas shooting, okay? You're trying to figure out where the gunshots are coming from. So if there's no silencer, let me give you a difference. It would be pop, pop, head down. Oh, I think he's up there. Okay, a silencer would be head down, pop, pop. Oh, he's there. It would be about that much of a difference.
Him and Hillary have been watching too many 007 films.
What I'm talking about tonight isn't about gun control. It's about common sense. Common
It's
sense
entirely
is
about
no
gun
good
control.
will ever come from allowing a person to have weapons that can take down 527 Americans at a concert. You know, in June of last year, the NRA fought to make sure people on the no-fly list can buy guns. They aren't allowed to get on a plane. They're allowed to own a very dangerous gun. Who thinks that makes sense?
Are you noticing a theme here?
Yeah.
Again, it's not a fundamental human right to get on a plane. It's not a fundamental human right to get your Southwest Airlines peanuts. By the way, I love the biscuits in Delta.
They're
delicious. I wish I could buy those from the store.
England's
If anyone knows where I can buy
best.
them, you send me the message. But are you noticing a point here? The no-fly list, you can't even get on a plane, but you can buy. Yeah, well, okay. Again, completely uninformed versus all it takes is one quick search so you know what the no-fly list is. It's not a terror watch list. It's not an official list. You don't have to have committed any crime, be involved with any terrorist organization, or even have looked at somebody the wrong way. You can be put on a no-fly list. How do we know? Because thousands of people have been put on the no-fly list with no cause, due process, or any means of retribution. Even Slate said the U.S. government is putting Americans on its no-fly list on a hunch. You can look up the names. You can look up a list of names just of people. I think it was Senator Ted Kennedy was on the no-fly list. So this is, again, they're hoping you don't run a quick search on the no-fly list. Jimmy Kimmel, who decided that he was going to go up and, by the way, cry from 0 to 60. It wasn't like it came over him. He cried immediately. I wonder, was he crying in the makeup chair? Was he crying in the green room? He walked out crying. He's hoping that you just don't run a rudimentary search on the no-fly list. I would encourage you to please do so in the comment below if you learned something. Next clip.
Maybe I'm nuts, but I would like to think we can put politics aside and agree that no American citizen needs an M16 or 10 of them.
Nobody has one.
M16s are select fire auto rifles not sold for civilian use. What's your point? Last clip. I can't do this much.
You know, I want this to be a comedy show. I hate talking about stuff like this.
No, you don't.
I just want to, laugh about things every night. But that,
No, you don't.
It seems to be becoming increasingly difficult lately.
All right, this is going to sound callous. It just means you suck at your job if it's increasingly difficult. You're a comedian. Your job is to be a comedian. We did it. We laughed last night. Why can't you, Jimmy Kimmel? Matter of fact, the only time Jimmy Kimmel is ever trending, the only time, is when it is political grandstanding. His comedy can't even generate the play of not gay Jared dressed in drag.
You're welcome, Internet.
It's difficult to do comedy. Well, okay, in what other job do you get to do that? This is where it comes back to the late night show. Again, if you look at Johnny Carson, you look back then, they either missed the show, they came out or had some comments, but they made sure to get back to jokes. That is your job, to try and entertain people. He says, I hate talking about this. No, you don't. No, you don't. You did this with Cecil the Lion. You had Chuck Schumer write a portion of your monologue so that you could, between throwing your actual physical child at politicians for political gain on healthcare, you had some talking points because Chuck Schumer gave them to you. It's really hard. In what other job can you do this, Jimmy Kimmel? I'm supposed to be a trash man, but it's just so difficult lately. Well, I'm a cardiac surgeon, but I'm just not. It's just becoming too hard.
Can't do it.
If you think it's impossible to do your job, Jimmy Kimmel, quit. It's not the job for you. And this is the issue, is when people go on there, Jimmy Kimmel was not given this. And this is when people, there was that documentary, Shut Up and Sing, on the Dixie Chicks. Like, they just want us to shut up and sing. Yeah, we do. Here's why. Doesn't mean you have to shut up and sing at a dinner party. Doesn't mean you have to shut up and sing in your own living room. Doesn't mean that people telling Jimmy Kimmel, they're not telling you can't have political opinions to yourself, but you weren't given that platform, the platform of this late night show, because of your political views. You were given the platform in order to create comedy. Your job is to create comedy. And in these scenarios, it's more important than ever. Your job is more important than on days where it's easy to do. On days where it's hard, people want to go home, they want to relax, they want to laugh. That's what we try to do with this show. People now can no longer turn to the NFL. Well, did they used to tune into the NFL because they wanted to hear their political strategists on the O-line? Not exactly. Nope. And they didn't want Jimmy Kimmel or Conan O'Brien, Jay Leno, take your picks. They didn't want these people to be in these positions because we valued their political commentary. These people are late night hosts, Jimmy Kimmel. And here's the thing. You're a pretty funny guy, but you are so woefully under-equipped to provide any political commentary whatsoever. That's probably why you need Chuck Schumer to do it for you. People are turning on you. Your numbers are terrible. People want you to do your job like the rest of us have to do our job. Because when you don't, and you're arguing from a litany of intellectual fallacies, again, kind of contrast when we talk about this, people like Ben Shapiro, people like Thomas Sowell, you look at Milton Friedman, there's an argument from truth where you need to provide as much information as humanly possible and let the cards fall where they may. With Jimmy Kimmel, all of his arguments are predicated on you not knowing anything about firearms. And so all I ask you is run a quick Google search on any one of these talking points and tell me if you think I'm wrong. Hey, if you like this video, subscribe by clicking the button. It's a circular button now that says subscribe. If not, head on over to the Young Turks. That's probably more your speed. Although they're coming over here. Cenk, we know you're here watching. I can smell you from here. There's also a recommended video box playing right up there. You can join the Mug Club at louderwithcrowder.com/mugclub for daily content, so we're not dependent here on YouTube. Cenk, go. No. Go. You don't need to stay here. This isn't good for, it's bad for your soul.